What does the Bible reveal about life before we are born? Flickering shadows dance upon ancient parchment, illuminating words whispered across millennia. We gather tonight, not in the clamor of the modern world, but in the quiet contemplation of ages past, seeking wisdom where light is often dim. Within the sacred texts, profound mysteries await our humble inquiry. One such enigma, deeply personal yet universally wondered, touches the very essence of our being. Before our first breath, before the world knew our name, did we exist? Did something of us already stir in the cosmic tapestry of creation? Tonight, we embark on a contemplative journey to unravel what the Bible, in its intricate layers of poetry, prophecy, and history, reveals about the subtle whispers of life before birth and what these ancient insights mean for us. Now, the echoes of eternity. Pre-existence in ancient thought. To truly grasp the biblical whispers of pre-existence, we must first attune ourselves to the intellectual and spiritual currents of the ancient world. Before the advent of modern biology, the mystery of life's genesis was often framed within philosophical and theological contexts. Many ancient cultures grappled with the idea of a soul's journey, positing various forms of pre-existence or reincarnation. While the Bible stands distinct from many of these pagan philosophies, it emerged from a world where such questions were actively pondered. The Israelite understanding, rooted in a covenantal relationship with a sovereign God, framed existence not as a cyclical transmigration, but as a deliberate act of divine creation, often imbued with a sense of purpose even before the physical manifestation. This context reminds us that the biblical authors were not addressing sterile biological questions, but profound theological ones about identity, destiny, and divine intentionality. Woven in the womb, scriptural glimpses of prior knowledge. The most compelling biblical attestations to a life, or at least a divine awareness, before birth often come through prophetic declarations and intimate prayers. Consider the prophet Jeremiah. In perhaps one of the most poignant verses on this subject, God declares to him, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations." Jeremiah 1-5. This is not merely a statement of God's foreknowledge, which is immense and all-encompassing, but rather a profound declaration of personal acquaintance and specific purpose. The Hebrew word for nuyada implies an intimate, relational knowledge far beyond a mere intellectual understanding. It suggests a direct interaction, a purposeful selection that transcends the moment of conception. Similarly, in Psalm 139, David expresses a profound sense of God's intimate involvement in his formation. "For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." Psalm 139-13, 16. Here, the imagery of knitting and seeing my unformed body speaks to a divine craftsmanship and a predetermined destiny. The book, containing all the days ordained for David before birth, powerfully suggests a preordained narrative, a life story already conceived in the divine mind. While not explicitly stating the conscious pre-existence of David himself, it certainly points to his identity and purpose being established and known by God long before his physical advent. These verses, taken together, suggest a profound understanding that an individual's identity and calling are not arbitrary, but are rooted in God's eternal plan. It implies that from God's perspective, our lives are not accidents of biology, but divinely purposed creations, known and intended even before we draw our first breath. Theological depths, divine sovereignty, and personal identity. Beyond the literal interpretation of these verses lies a deeper theological significance concerning divine sovereignty and the nature of human identity. If God knew Jeremiah before he was formed, and if our days were written in his book before we were born, it speaks volumes about God's intimate involvement in every human life. This perspective elevates human existence beyond mere biological happenstance, imbuing it with intrinsic value and divine intention from its earliest moments. This concept also touches upon the ongoing debate about the soul and its origin. While some theological traditions posit the pre-existence of souls in a more literal sense, the dominant Christian understanding, particularly rooted in Augustinian thought, tends to view the soul as being created at or around the moment of conception. However, the biblical passages discussed do not necessarily contradict this. Instead, they emphasize God's knowledge and purpose for an individual predating physical formation rather than the conscious, personal pre-existence of the individual's soul. It's less about I was somewhere before and more about God already knew and planned for me before I was here. This distinction is crucial for understanding the nuances of the biblical narrative. Controversies and interpretations. The limits of literalism. While the verses from Jeremiah and Psalms are powerful, it is important to acknowledge that the concept of individual pre-existence, meaning our conscious selves existing before conception, is not explicitly or widely taught throughout the Bible. These passages are often interpreted as highlighting God's omniscient foreknowledge and sovereign plan, rather than a literal prior existence of a person's soul. Some early Christian thinkers, influenced by Platonic philosophy, did entertain ideas of pre-existent souls, but these views were largely rejected by mainstream Christian theology. The main controversy, therefore, isn't about whether we consciously existed, but rather how to precisely interpret God knew you. Is it merely foreknowledge, or does it imply a deeper, almost proto-existence in the divine mind, where our individual identity and purpose were already fully formed and known? The latter seems to resonate more deeply with the language used, suggesting a profound creational design. The Bible does not offer a systematic theology of pre-existence in the same way it details creation or redemption, leaving room for contemplation and a reverent acceptance of divine mystery, the lingering echoes of divine intent. Our journey through these ancient texts concludes, leaving us not with definitive answers, but with profound questions and a deeper sense of wonder. The Bible, in its subtle declarations and poetic imagery, does not overtly proclaim a conscious, individual life before birth in the way some philosophies might. Yet, it speaks unequivocally of a God who knows us, purposes us, and consecrates us even before our formation in the womb. This revelation transforms our understanding of identity, purpose, and the sanctity of life. It suggests that from the first flicker of potential within the divine mind, we are not accidental beings, but intended creations, woven into the grand narrative of God's universe. What does it mean for your life, knowing that your existence was not only foreseen but intimately known and purposed by the Creator long before you ever drew breath? Let this truth resonate within you, a silent echo of eternity, reminding you of the profound depth and divine intentionality of your own precious life. What does the Bible reveal about life before we are born? Flickering shadows dance upon ancient parchment, illuminating words whispered across millennia. We gather tonight, not in the clamor of the modern world, but in the quiet contemplation of ages past, seeking wisdom where light is often dim. Within the sacred texts, profound mysteries await our humble inquiry. One such enigma, deeply personal yet universally wondered, touches the very